Attention, this is Martin H. at Temporal Discussion, logging experiment TD14F. The time, the early 90s. Make a TV series that's a cross between LARPing and Challenge Annika, and you can alter the very fabric of children's television. In the 21st century, detailed information on a certain Broadsword Productions BBC Two show has been mostly mislaid. A basic Wikipedia page, a brief mention on the Nightmare Lexicon and UK game shows, and a complete absence of an IMDb page. But we will find it, watch it, and use it to provide a complete episode retrospective of TimeBusters. Welcome, Time Vandals, to the 6th TimeBusters special on Temporal Discussion. I'm Martin Harder, once a winner at Night Bingo.
And I'm Jason Karl, once a winner of Nightmare.
Today we're taking a look at the widely available two-part episode from the first series of TimeBusters, which we believe aired on Sunday the 31st of January and Sunday the 7th of February 1993. Bram Stoker's Dracula, starring Gary Oldman, Winona Ryder and Keanu Reeves, was number one at the box office for both weeks, whilst Whitney Houston's I Will Always Love You spent the last of an incredible 13-week run at number one, before being replaced with Two Unlimited's irritatingly catchy No Limit on the 7th.
I loved this version of Dracula. It was iconic.
It's brilliant, isn't it? I want to preface this by saying I think Keanu Reeves is a brilliant actor, especially given the right role. I don't think he particularly shines in this particular role, but everything else about the film is fantastic.
I just remember it being an amazing movie and it being responsible for introducing the extremely different of its time image of Count Dracula as depicted in that movie, with the long flowing velvet robe and the unusually shaped hair and head. Was incredibly iconic, and a lot of things have been based on that since, and that film was responsible for it. I loved it.
It's a fantastic movie. I Will Always Love You. Not a lot you can say about it. It's a brilliant song. I personally prefer the original version by Dolly Parton, but Whitney Houston just knocks it out the park.
I mean, what a great song. And I didn't realise it was number one for 13 weeks, but I'm not surprised. It's probably as well known today as it was then.
True.
But after 13 weeks, I'm sure it needed a break. And so we've got No Limit by Two Unlimited, which I also remember with fondness.
It's a catchy song. I remember we used to refer to it as There's No Lyrics.
Are they necessary? We remember the song.
Exactly. Too many lyrics get in the way.
Yes.
I'll let Jake do the Pride of Bilbao a bit because it was his spot.
Hello there, listeners. Fancy meeting you here. There are two outstanding points of possible interest from previous TimeBusters special episodes of Temporal Discussion that have occurred to me, and I'm now going to share with you. The first of which is that the Pride of Bilbao ferry service, i.e. when the ship was given that name and took on the Portsmouth to Bilbao route, actually started in 1993, the same year that the episode was made. Thus, the ship's bells are proudly engraved with the motto Pride of Bilbao 1993. So the information that Martin had that it started in 1994 was only wrong by the absolute minimum of 1 year. The second point of possible interest links back to the RAF Ghosts episode, and it's simply that, like Martin, the time capsules on TimeBusters used to remind me of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles ooze canisters when I used to watch the show in the 90s. I never owned that particular piece of merchandise myself, but I do remember seeing them in the Argos catalogue.
And now podcast capsule activated retrospective analysis confirmed.
Who's from the Benjamin Britten School Lowestoft? Great, okay, so you're the Guilsborough School Northampton? Yeah. Okay, come on, on your get as quick as you can. Some up, some down.
So we haven't covered season 1 on this podcast yet. So this is the first time we, as Temporal Discussion, are meeting TJ. She's played very ably by Tracy Jane White, and she's needed in this show at the beginning because we've got 2 teams here, which is different from later on in TimeBusters, but we have 2 teams of children. And in order to get enough quality television out of them, i.e. getting them to do things and talk, it's necessary to have a performer, a character, to speak to them in order to get them to speak back. It's not like Nightmare where you've got 3 people sat around and hopefully they'll chat to each other about what they can see on the mirror or on the monitor. Here it's quite different, so I can completely see why it's necessary to have these 2 characters at the beginning of TimeBusters.
True. So there's a familiar sound effect being used for the bus rematerialising here. Sounds very much like the old portal sound effects from Nightmare.
That sort of whistling noise from season 3 onwards. It may well be the same sound. You do find occasionally across television productions, certainly ones of the early 90s and before that, where there were far fewer available sound effects in sound effect libraries. Today, there is an infinitesimal amount available because all sound effect libraries are online and digital, but they weren't then. I can remember back in the mid-90s when I was working in television that we would have a library, shelves and shelves of CDs of sound effects. And prior to that, they would have been on vinyls, on records. I remember the BBC releasing various collections of sound effects. So it doesn't surprise me at all that you occasionally get the same or similar sound effects popping up in different shows.
Yeah, I did drama at school, and we had to do a piece that was based on a historical style of performance, and I did Grand Guignol.
Ooh, French horror theatre.
Yes, but the main reason I did that was because we had the BBC library sound effects for horror and torture.
Very appropriate for Grand Guignol.
Good of you to find the time to join us. Tricky stuff, time. There's either too much of it or not enough. But when it gets out of hand, things can get very serious indeed. That's when they call for me. Professor McNulty's the name. And with my apprentice TJ, it's our job to prevent bits of history from leaking through the very structure of space-time itself. Now, the damage is caused by time vandals, and we're out to stop them. Coming along for the ride? Yes, I thought you would.
The bus materialises in the grounds of Somerleyton Hall, Suffolk. The team from Lowestoft is extremely local to the shooting location. The team from Northampton is not.
Yes, and it's nice to see Somerleyton Hall because the majority of season 1 was filmed at one location, which was Newstead Abbey in Nottinghamshire, most of the episodes. And then you had a couple of episodes filmed here at Somerleyton Hall and a couple at Wollerton Hall. So if you watch all of the season 1 episodes, you kind of recognise the same spaces being used from different angles in some of the episodes, in different stories and supposedly different time periods. But to see Somerleyton Hall here on this episode of 2 is nice to see something that's completely different. And what a stunning location it is, and also relatively local to Norwich where the production team were, and thus probably somewhat cheaper to film at, I would think, not necessarily because of location fees but because of accommodating people and contestants from the production team. So perhaps that's why Somerleyton was chosen, or maybe just because it is so fantastic on camera, because it really is.
Yeah, that's lovely. It's like the kind of place my wife likes to go to with her National Trust card.
Ah, absolutely, yeah. I haven't been to Somerleyton Hall myself, but it looks stunning. I've seen it on many television shows actually over the years, particularly because of its very unusual and large maze, which we don't see that many of nowadays. There are a few others, but it has a stunning maze which is used a lot within TimeBusters.
Right, come along, everybody off. No time to spare. This is a dirty great vortex right across our path. Well, that's strange. No signs of immediate decay.
Well, what does that mean? Well, surely, Prof, that's a good thing, isn't it?
Well, yes and no, TJ. The good news is that the vortex is fresh, so that we'll have more than the usual amount of time to complete our task. The bad news is that it's so fresh that I suspect that one of the vandals that have caused it is still in the vicinity.
This is the first episode of Series 1 I've actually seen, and I did believe at first that it was unusual for the two teams to be working together, but that's not correct, is it?
The original series of TimeBusters, quite different from the second and third, and there were obvious changes made between seasons 2 and 3, but the most significant changes were made between 1 and 2. In that, the first season of TimeBusters had two teams of children working to complete the same essential mission, which is to find and bring back to Buster a time capsule in order to stop the time rift from being ruptured and thus completing the game successfully. And the reason that you had two teams in TimeBusters to start with, I couldn't tell you because I do not know. I could hazard guesses, and I would guess that one of the reasons would perhaps be to make it significantly different from Nightmare, in that there are two game teams, and thus because there are two game teams, you need the two hosts, as I mentioned briefly before. But in this episode, or this double episode, we see them working together to complete a mission together, and that's pretty much the same across the first season. They don't have very separate mission ideas. They basically are going for the same thing, which is destroy the Time Vandal's ability to disrupt the time rift by collecting and securing the time capsule. That was a very long way around of saying, but possibly that's why there were two. So yeah, if you haven't seen a lot of season 1, it would be a reasonable comment, but no, it was not unusual for two teams to be working together across a mission in TimeBusters in Series 1.
I work with Martin O'Doney. I'm used to the long way round of saying things.
Professor McNulty announces that they are interfacing with the year 1925 and directs the contestants to watch Buster's main scanner, which is basically a window of the lower deck of the bus. Now we get the one piece of spy cam footage for the entire two-part episode, very different from the multiple plot-advancing spyglass type sequences that we see in Series 2 and 3. And this is quite different in Season 1 because you get this sort of master video vignette which sets up what's happening in the mission and the people and the characters. And then in some episodes of Series 1 you also get a shorter one later, but you don't get the several of them as you do in later series.
Good day to you. I won't say welcome because you're not. I'm Brigadier General Sir Rodney Hawkes Taylor, and you of course are my only surviving relatives, and you look like a bunch of vultures to me, I must say. Well, we've never met before, and if I had my way we never would. Still, we better get it over with. Oh, come on, introduce yourselves.
Great Uncle Rodney, you're just as I imagined you. You don't know what a thrill it is to know that the world's most famous big game hunter is actually a relative of
Cut
one.
the cackle, girl, and say who you are.
Why, I'm your niece, Lady Daphne Hawkes Taylor, of course, and I just want to know...
Enough said, missy. Who's the pink-faced popinjay on your left?
Steady on, sir. I say there's no need for full ceremony amongst family, but this is taking things a pinch too far. The Honourable Patrick Hawkes Taylor, at your service. Daph's my cousin, in case you're unclear on the connection.
It's as clear as a tiger's eye. And you, sir? Yes, you in the fancy dress. Which part of the vulture clan are you?
Brewster Hawks, Chicago, Illinois, United States of America. And let me just say, I don't take no offense at your words. I'm a plain-talking man myself. And this is my dear wife, Phoebe.
I'm delighted to meet you, your lordship. Well, pardon me, but when I first learned that my dear Brewster was actually related to the English aristocracy, why, I couldn't wait.
Humbug, madam, I'm a baronet, not a belted earl. Still, I don't suppose to you it makes much difference, does it? And you, sir? You must be the writer, chappie. What's your name?
Peregrine Taylor, sir. A distant cousin and struggling writer of fictional matter.
Rubbish! You invented that Bulldog what's-his-name character. Bulldog Bennett, that's it. You're probably richer than I am. And nearly as mad. Anyway, you can all shut up now. It wasn't my idea to bring you here. It was my lawyers who insisted. One of you has got to be my heir for the sake of the estate and its workers. Now, there's no point bullying me up, because I don't have to decide. I couldn't care less, any case. Next few days, these legal chappies will interview you all and make up their minds. Now, I can't tell you what the blighters look like, but they will have letters of attorney to show you, so you know it's pucker to answer their questions. And then you can all push off until I'm dead, which apparently won't be long. And now I'm going to push off too.
Professor McNulty makes sure we've all got the basic idea by specifying that one of the people from the pre-recorded scene is the Time Vandal in disguise. Then he asks TJ to introduce all the team members by name.
Yeah, this introduction of the possibility that one of the player characters, the non-player characters rather, the interactive cast is a Time Vandal is also not unique to this adventure or to this set of episodes. That happened several times in season 1, but unlike what we had in seasons 2 and 3, where you have the introduction of Dr. Paradox as a returning Time Vandal villain, head of the Time Vandals, if you like. That was not the case. You didn't have any mention of Dr. Paradox at all in season 1. And instead, we have a variety of different characters that turn out to be Time Vandals in the various different episodes. I think I'm right in remembering that there wasn't one in every episode, but there was one in several different episodes. This is not the only time that happened.
I like the fact that it gives the audience a chance to play along and try and guess who the Time Vandal is, but I also miss having a proper booable baddie.
Yeah.
Like Dr. Paradox.
When you have Dr. Paradox, and in the various different incarnations later on in the seasons where he dresses up in a different outfit or puts on a beard or a dress in one case in order to appear to be some other character, of course the audience at home know it's him because it's the same actor, so you can't play along. Whereas here, in this season, series 1, you don't know who the Time Vandal is, so you can play along, and I think that's more fun.
Right, well, in red, we've got the Guilsborough School from Northampton. Their runners in the field are Sally and Andrew. Their leader in the red camera helmet is...
Richard.
And their controller on maps and scanners is Emily.
Excellent.
Right, now the yellow team are from the Benjamin Britten High School in Lowestoft. Their runners in the field are Martin and Neil. Their leader in the yellow camera helmet is...
Sam.
And their controller upstairs in Buster is Mandy.
Good. And welcome to you all.
The professor tells the red team that their task is to recover the time capsule, and he hands over to TJ, who tells the yellow team they need to learn the identity of the Time Vandal, find out where his or her time machine is hidden, and then destroy it with a paradox gun.
Now listen, TimeBusters. If we can both succeed in these missions, we can not only close the vortex down and save a slice of history, but we can maroon the Time Vandal in the year 1925, where he or she can do no further damage.
TJ takes 2 controllers up to the top deck of the bus. Then there's a very boring sequence. Jake says it's a very boring sequence. The lead runners testing the mic and camera links to the controllers. I think this is quite an important sequence. I think it establishes things.
In terms of today, I can understand why Jake, who wrote this script for us kindly, would say that it's boring, but actually of its time, this would have been quite unusual. Nowadays, we're very used to seeing somebody else somewhere else live on a video stream on a phone or online or in any different places. But then this would have been unusual. So the fact that the controller in the time bus in Buster is able to actually see a video feed which is being broadcast from the helmet of the runner, part of their team on the venue in the site itself, this would have been unusual and exciting. And therefore having this sequence where the viewer is introduced to this is important, I think.
I hate scenes showcasing tech, and I always have, listeners. Let's get on with the game at this point, I say. Speaking of which...
Now, you've got to find those legal documents that Sir Rodney mentioned before you start interviewing your suspects.
Prof?
Yes, TJ?
I've sent in the probes you've asked for, Prof, and we can confirm that there are some letters in the library tied with red ribbon. There's some writing on the front, but the remote eye cams can't quite make it out.
Good. Now, one last point. Until you have those documents, you are liable to be approached and arrested and thrown off the estate. So, mission running. TimeBusters, go! Go, 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 go!
6 runners enter the hall and eventually find the legal document, which empowers them to interview the interactive cast. The yellow team head off to the stables to talk to Patrick. They know he'll be there because he had a riding crop in the video playback, whilst the reds go to the maze, acting on information from Buster's scanners to interview Lady Daphne. This double episode is full of red herrings and dead ends. There's actually one single vital piece of evidence for each team hidden in amongst all the various testimony, but we're currently nowhere near to hearing either of those yet. It does feel rather Agatha Christie, doesn't it?
It is. It's like a clue-done-it with these set of 1920s characters in a big old country house. But talking of the characters and the performers playing them, there is a sort of revolving pool of cast, and they use different people sometimes. Occasionally one will pop up that you've seen before. But in this particular set of episodes of TimeBusters, there are two performers which would be recognised by anybody who watched one of Broadsword's other series, which was the Satellite Game, made for British Satellite Broadcasting, which was presented by a computer represented by a spinning and moving image on a screen. And the voice of that computer, that presenter, was Freya Westall. And Freya Westall is the performer in this episode of TimeBusters who is playing the rich American. And Lady Daphne, the English lady of the house, is played by Alice Arnold, who was also in the Satellite Game for Broadsword Television, and she played two characters. One was called Eve, a sort of goddess android, and the other was Carmen Roller, a sort of airport hostess. So a lot of people won't have seen that. There are a couple of episodes available online, but it's interesting to see them in totally different parts here in TimeBusters, and it's nice to see.
Did you get to meet them when you were on the Satellite Game?
Yes, of course, yeah.
Cool.
Freya Westall was not only in the Satellite Game as Coco, the host, she was also used as the co-host on the original set of pilots never broadcast for Cyberzone. So the Cyberzone programme with Craig Charles and Thesp, which was played by the actor James Grout on the BBC Two when it was commissioned. But the earlier pilots featured not the same Thesp. It was a female head on the screen, and that head was that of Freya Westall.
Awesome.
And Alice Arnold, of course, we see on our screens relatively regularly criticising television with her wife on Gogglebox.
Yes, of course. I originally wrote here that I don't think the show has quite found its feet yet. I think that's a bit unfair. I think I was a bit unfair when I wrote that. It's definitely not quite evolved to the state that it was by the time it finished.
I mean, it changed hugely. Across 3 different years, it changed hugely in the same way that if you looked at Nightmare Season 1 to Nightmare Season 8, the same thing applies. And probably if you looked at Big Brother 1 and you looked at Big Brother now, you barely recognise them as the same programme. That's normal in the sort of life of a television format television show. It was a very different program to start with. Was it better or worse? I would say it's just different. The main thing, of course, being that, as I mentioned before, that we have 2 sets of players instead of 1, which from a television production point of view, on location with limited time, with children who don't have scripts and who don't know what's going to happen, and trying to get all that in the can on camera so that you can edit it into something watchable. To me, it sounds like an absolute nightmare full of moving parts that you can't control.
I think I appreciate the Agatha Christie style as an adult more than I would have as a child.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would probably related it more to something like Cluedo, which I think was on television roughly the same sort of time, where you had various different celebrities playing Mrs. Peacock and Reverend Green, etc., and other celebrities pretending they didn't know who'd done it.
I used to love that show. I used to watch it with my grandparents.
I did. I used to get a notebook and try and work out who'd done it before they did. And occasionally I got it right, but mostly I got it wrong.
A stranger lies dead in Arlington Grange. There are 6 suspects, but which one is the killer?
Patrick is found tending to the horses in the stables.
This was a good shout. He'll probably be in the stables because he had a riding crop.
Well, that would be perfect. That's what TimeBusters is. Look for the clues and follow them. For all we know, one of the hosts could have said, "Oh, did he have a riding crop?" Could be reminded of something, very much like Treguard would occasionally say something that was very obvious that the team had just not picked up on. Who knows? I don't think that particularly matters, because they'd have got the kids to the stable somehow, because that's where they want to film the next section.
Yeah. So this kid is actually really quick-witted when it comes to keeping up the pretense of being one of the world's youngest solicitors.
Even though they're dressed in very unusual, bright-coloured clothes with technology that the characters would never have seen or understand. But this is brushed away most of the time in TimeBusters, as it must be, as a ghastly anachronism that can't be explained. And occasionally they slightly address it by saying, "Oh, you're wearing strange clothes, aren't you?" And then they say, "Well, we're the solicitors." And that supposedly explains why they're wearing these dresses. So solicitors must have worn very odd clothes in 1925 and helmets.
I like that Patrick asks who he's talking to when he's talking to someone on the walkie-talkie, and he just says, "Oh, someone in here."
Yes.
Like, because they don't have two-way radios in that time. Poor Patrick probably thinks he's talking to someone in his head. Oh, okay then.
This is okay. Oh, that's fine then. It's just somebody in your head. No problem. Let's get on with it. Maybe solicitors are doing unusual things like that all the time, so it's perfectly normal for a solicitor to talk to someone in his head. You never know.
Well, to be fair, I think if someone taps their head and says, "I'm talking to someone in here," you would just say, "Okay then."
Move on. Yes. Probably the wisest thing to do.
After being shown the power of attorney letter, Patrick tells the Yellows that he finds Mr. Brewster Hawkes strange because he's mad on cars rather than horses like Patrick himself, and one of the staff thinks he has a gun in his room. Patrick also has doubts that the marriage between Brewster and Phoebe is real. They may be only pretending. Now imagine being so mad on something that you do something like, I don't know, make a podcast about it or something.
Well, you'd have to be insane, wouldn't you, surely? Yeah, this is the first time we get this sort of subtext about Brewster and Phoebe not actually being married, which doesn't seem to really matter anyway.
It's a bit of a red herring, isn't it?
Yeah, it's kind of irrelevant.
Has he got any idea where Brewster Hawkes would be?
Do you know anywhere where Brewster Hawkes should be at this minute?
Well, Brewster, this is funny because he likes memorabilia and trophies and things, and he seems to spend all his time sort of dusting the animals in the trophy room.
Meanwhile, the Reds learn from Daphne that Phoebe always addresses her supposed husband Brewster as boss, which seems to back up Patrick's suspicion that they may not really be married. Daphne also admits to having a bit of a crush on Peregrine, or Perry Taylor, but she's rather upset because he's frightfully busy all the time and he's turned down her offer of a game of tennis.
How dare he?
Wow, that's the ultimate, what's the word? Rejection, I suppose. I'm sure, in 1925, in a country house estate like this, with perhaps members of a higher aristocratic breeding, maybe being asked to play a game of tennis by a single lady, if you are a single man, might infer that you were perhaps interested in that person. And if it was subsequently refused, that might be taken as a harsh insult.
I think tennis was a big status thing back then, wasn't it?
Well, yes, and the majority of people would never have a tennis court to play on anyway, and we didn't have health clubs with tennis courts available then, did we?
No.
Daphne also says that Perry spends a lot of time poking around the house, perhaps looking for something specific, and that she herself has, upon being asked, given Phoebe directions to the sundial in the West Garden, which is the Red Team's next port of call. But we have to wait until the next episode to see them go there. And this sundial, I have to say, reminded me, when I rewatched this episode earlier today, of the Moon Dial. Do you remember that wonderful television drama series, Moon Dial?
I have a vague memory of it. I have seen it.
Yeah, it was brilliant. I loved it. That was on the BBC as well. It was a story by Helen Cresswell, a book made into a very spooky and themed to time travel, actually, show. It wasn't filmed here at Somerleyton Hall. It was filmed at Belton House. So it's not the same sundial, but it's all centred around this sundial, which actually is a moon dial. And when the moon shines on it, time moves. And the main character in the show, Minty, goes back in time and sees, for all intents and purposes, ghosts, but she's actually time travelling. So it does have a lot of connections and similarities to TimeBusters.
Some reason it seems to blend with the Box of Delights in my head.
Oh, that was brilliant too, wasn't it? I loved it. Still do love the Box of Delights.
Say thank you very much, and we must get a move on now.
Right, go.
We need to go back. We need to go back the same way we came.
The Yellows run Brewster to Earth in the trophy room. He is played by James Hamill, who also appears in the North Norfolk Railway episodes as another American character, Jimmy Gladwin, Dr. Paradox's intended victim in that one.
Yes, we do see lots of repeat actors in TimeBusters.
Yeah.
And I'm just trying to look it up now. James Hamill.
Jake's a big fan of the North Norfolk Railway episode in particular.
That was the one Iona Kennedy was in, wasn't it? And Mark Knight. Yeah, no, I can't see James Hamill actually in any others other than these two episodes and that one.
Okay.
Sam Perkins, do you know, was in the very first episode of season 1. Clifford Norgate was in one of them. Let me see where that was. He was in episode 5, Clifford Norgate, and Lawrence Werber, and David Lerner was in that one, and he was the time vandal. Tom Carroll was in that, which is, of course, Olaf, Mrs. Grimwald. In fact, that episode was all nightmare performers, bar one.
I can't imagine David Lerner playing a bad guy. He looks so cherishable.
He was the time vandal in that one, and he was in several, actually, of season 1, David Lerner. And Alice Arnold was in several as well.
Could you tell us about Patrick? The Honourable Patrick.
Oh, yeah, I'll tell you about the guy. Have you seen him?
Yeah.
I'm talking a weed. I'm talking, featherweight.
Says he's a
You blow on
weed,
this guy,
featherweight.
He falls down.
He falls
Yeah?
down. He's a right
Don't-
wimp. That's what he says.
No?
He doesn't like him.
Brewster also says that Patrick has been sniffing around Phoebe, to whom he insists he himself is really married, despite the fact that they don't wear wedding rings. He also dislikes Peregrine the Pelican Taylor, whom he judges to be full of himself due to his status as a published author.
Yeah, so a slap on the wrist for anyone who's a published author, because it obviously means you're full of yourself, not simply a job and something you have achieved in life that should be celebrated.
So, I mean, it's good on the team for noticing they're not wearing wedding rings.
Yeah, it's another red herring, though, isn't it? I mean, it doesn't make any difference. I don't know. I don't quite know what if there is a subtext or what it's supposed to be, other than it may be just simply to distract them and make them think it's relevant when it's not. There's very little that's relevant at the moment.
Do you know where we could find him?
Yeah.
Well, one last thing. What about this gun in your bedroom?
Hey, Guns, look, I'm a peaceful man, all right? You know what I'm saying? I mean, I
Yeah.
don't, hey, come on, we're all friends. Now, listen, Peregrine, I do know where he is.
Yeah.
He told me he was in the,
Says he's in the
Somerweston. It was something like, he said that he was in the Somerweston maze. He
Somerweston
said he was the only
maze
guy
in the
that
maze.
Was,
Oh, no.
clever enough to be able to figure it out. Now, listen, I'm going to tell you, it's miles away.
Yeah.
I got my car parked out front. You guys want a lift?
Yeah, go on then.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
fine. Come with me. I'll take you in
He's
the car.
now going to take us in the car.
Listen, it's not a bad car.
He's going to take us in the car.
He's taking him in the car. I think they've got to go in. I don't know. Oh. Be careful, he could be the time vandal.
It's okay, he's not. Brewster very kindly gives the yellows a lift in his car as they head towards the maze to speak to Perry, and we come to the end of the first episode. And this is a first for TimeBusters, in that we have a sort of temporal disruption whereby the screen freezes and we're told that it continues next time, and Professor McNulty goes from being an on-screen host in the TimeBusters world to being a voiceover presenter in the TV edit suite, simply saying that you have to join us next week to see the concluding part of this adventure.
And sadly, that's where time has currently defeated our Timebusters. The search for the Time Vandal and the Time Capsule continues at the same time next week, when we'll bring you the concluding episode of The Strange Legacy of Somerweston Hall.
These kids are too keen to jump into a car with strangers, though.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. They obviously weren't taught by their parents not to get in a car with strange men. But I think it's nice because we see so much in TimeBusters of children running inanely from one place to another, not doing very much other than running, which is fine, but we do see an awful lot of it. But here, the mode of transport, mode of movement from one place to another is replaced with this old vintage car, which I think is quite fun.
Yeah, and the kids must have enjoyed the bit of a rest. One of them was complaining earlier that she was tired.
Well, you would be, wouldn't you? If you were a 10-ish-year-old child being forced to run around making a TV show when you'd normally be at school and you only had a certain amount of time to do it, you would be exhausted, I could imagine. So yes, I'm sure they were tired.
Yeah, let's not forget also, they would have been carrying not just the head cameras, but also the batteries for them.
Yeah, well, the backpack on the back of the one who wears the camera on the helmet is all the technical gubbins required for that to be broadcasting that signal back to Buster. I mean, who knows how heavy it was, but it would have had some weight to it. So yes, and they're also running around in the summer in the sun with long-sleeved sweatshirts on with TimeBusters on. I don't know if they sometimes had t-shirts. I think perhaps they did, but they would have been hot and tired, I should imagine.
Interceptor. That's what the backpacks really kind of make me think of.
I loved Interceptor. That was an amazing show. Such a shame it was cut short.
Yeah, too expensive, I think, wasn't it?
Well, what happened was that it was so much of a flop in terms of viewers that ITV cut it short, so they didn't ever broadcast the full series the first time round because no advertisers were buying adverts in the breaks, so they couldn't broadcast all of it. I mean, it has been broadcast since in its entirety on other channels like Challenge, etc. over the years, but its initial run, no, it was not seen as a success at all, which is a shame because it was the same production company, same producer as Treasure Hunt and Crystal Maze on Channel 4, and so you would expect that it would be a success, but this was ITV, a very different set of viewers. Interceptor was put on ITV. I loved it. I thought it was brilliant.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. So the episode mostly seems to be set up so far, which is kind of par for the course for a two-part episode of any show, really.
It is. It's all set up, and we don't really get either a sort of cliffhanger, other than the fact that we don't know anything, and we know lots of things that we don't know why yet. But there isn't really a cliffhanger other than they're in a car and they're going to a maze. You've got to cut it at some point into two pieces, and that was where they decided to do it. One thing I do find slightly odd or confusing is the fact that they call this hall within the TimeBusters universe, they call it Somerweston Hall. Well, of course, it's actually called Somerleyton Hall. If you're going to change the name, why would you change it only very slightly? Why would you not change it completely?
Good point.
The second episode begins with a substantial recap, and then we rejoin the Reds in the West Garden as they interview Phoebe. And this recap very much reminds me of a extended dungeon ditty from Nightmare, where you get a "this is what's happened before and now this is where we are" type setup. And it's totally necessary, because if you haven't seen the first episode, you'd have no idea what you're watching. But it's unique to this set of episodes in this season because it is a double episode adventure or mission.
What would we call it, though? Not a dungeon ditty, but something else.
A TimeBusters tally?
Good one. I like that.
That was just off the cuff. I could probably think of something better.
Wait a minute. Who are you?
We're from Dobson and Partners.
Dobson and Partners. What's that?
Let
me see that. Oh, I see. You're those attorneys that old Sir Rodney was talking about. Awful young to be an attorney, aren't you? Well, I was expecting a bunch of old men, not you guys. That's Sir Rodney, though, you know. I think he's a bit senile. Do you know what I saw? He's an ex-big game hunter, right? And he's over 70 if he's a day, and I saw him playing with dolls in the doll's house. Now, I think he's a bit senile. I think so. Don't you? Well, would you play with dolls when you were over 70 years old?
There's an important clue as to the identity of the time vandal at the location of the capsule.
There is, and this is the part where we get the mention of the dollhouse, isn't it? Out of nothing, we suddenly get this information that, oh, I saw him playing with the dollhouse, strange thing to do, which is very clearly, you must go and find the doll's house, there's something important about it.
Yeah, I don't think the team really pick up on it at this point.
No, but they are getting stimuli from all sorts of different things, aren't they? Making a TV show, it's hot, they're tired, they're running about, they've got this equipment on them, they've got producers and goodness knows production assistants saying this, that and the other. And the way TimeBusters was filmed, it wasn't of course filmed in one set of shots as we see it in the edit. As it's broadcast, it was filmed in segments where they had a sort of timeout button, if you like, which I think was a piece of wood with a circle on it where they had to press this button and that stopped time, and that was the end of that sequence before the next sequence would be set up perhaps elsewhere, and then they would film that. So they're getting lots of stimuli. So the fact that they may not have picked up on this immediately, they would have had time to talk about it in one of the breaks prior to filming another one later. And I'm sure that if they didn't pick up on it, that somebody would have reminded them that what did they say about the dollhouse? Oh yes, we need to find a dollhouse.
Speaking of breaks, do you think it was like Nightmare where the kids didn't see the actors out of character?
I would assume that would have been the intention, yes, absolutely, for the same reasons, because they're trying to make, for the contestants, for the TimeBusters themselves, they're trying to make this as fair a game and as real an experience as possible, when clearly it's neither, and that's obvious to the kids and to everybody else. So yeah, they would have made sure, I'm certain, although I don't know, they would have kept the characters well away from the contestants during those times when they weren't turning camera.
Phoebe also tells the Reds that Perry is snooty and nosy, which very much tallies with her husband's view of him, and that she's recently seen him going into the maze. They head to find him. Meanwhile, Brewster drops off the yellows at the maze and they find Perry in the middle.
And we have this wonderful set of shots of people running through the maze. When I was rewatching this, I was imagining how this was filmed, and it would have been awful for the production team to try and catch this, because you've got a set of children, 3 children here, running through a maze where they've multiple options where they may or may not go. You've got one cameraman with a very heavy camera running after them to get that shot. Then you've got another cameraman with probably, I would imagine, sticks or a tripod in the middle, who's trying to catch the tops of their heads as they run past. And they're separating from each other, which is why you get TJ continually reminding them to stay together. And I'm sure this is because it's impossible to film them otherwise. It's not because they require them to stay together for any reason other than getting them on camera. But it would have been a nightmare to film this, and what we see is a melange of shots edited together, not quite correctly, I would argue, so that we see it condensed into a run through the maze to get to the middle, which probably took an awfully much longer time, I should think, to actually achieve in reality.
Jake has some personal experience with the maze at Somerleyton. So Jake, I'm going to let you tell us about that here.
This is what I had to say in the script about the maze at Somerleyton Hall. It is fun and not too hard to solve, although the yellow runners had quite a bit of trouble with it. I do think it's an excellent hedge maze, listeners. Certainly I found it much easier to get to grips with than the other hedge maze that's been mentioned previously on this podcast, that at Leeds Castle in Kent. I'm sure you remember that if you make it to the middle of that one, which is not that easy, and exit through the grotto, you'll see the big stone face that mysteriously turned up in the closing credits of Nightmare Series 4 Episode 12. The other point I mentioned here was that Somerleyton Maze also makes a very nice appearance in an episode of Interceptor, which the guys were discussing not so long ago, weren't they? There's a rather brilliant ambush scene in there, featuring some very nice teamwork between the Interceptor himself and his helicopter pilot, Mikey. I like it!
I'm not so sure about these maps that Buster's generated. I'm sure I probably wouldn't have noticed at the time, but as an adult, it's pretty obvious that the locator dot is just being manipulated by someone with a mouse.
Absolutely, of course it is. It's exactly the same as when you have Nightmare and the Dungeoneer disappears and becomes a star or whatever, various other things we could talk about, like the Reach Wand. It's exactly that. It's just somebody with a mouse, which is vaguely representing where they are going on this crudely created, but of its time, I would think impressive, map of this site. And you get those maps in all of the TimeBusters episodes, and they're all similar in the style of how they're created.
Yes, emulating a technology that's not available to you.
Absolutely. I can remember a game show that I was involved with much later than this, early 2000s. And at that time, SatNav was a relatively new and amazing thing. And actually in the show, there was a shot of the SatNav. Like, we must have this shot of the SatNav. And it was because it was unusual and it was vogue and new and exciting and different. Whereas now, if you put a shot of a SatNav, people would wonder why on earth you were putting that in, because it's so normal. But of its time, that was a special thing.
Could you tell us about your books, please? You know, main characters.
The main character of my books is Bulldog Bennett. Bulldog Bennett. He's stood me in good stead over all these years. Absolutely.
How many copies did you sell?
How many copies?
Yeah. Have you got a brief idea?
Listen, before I tell you anything.
Yeah.
I see here that you're authorised to interview...
Can you just tell us?
1 second.
Well, hurry up. Please.
I'm sorry?
The yellow leader, Sam, speaks a little bit abruptly to the character, almost putting the entire mission in jeopardy. Perry is affronted and offended and refuses to speak to the yellows any further. A hasty apology is required. And it's quite funny, this, because it's really obvious that Sam, the leader of this team, is trying very much to get the information and get the scene moving. We get what he wants, get what they need, and move on. And the non-player character, Perry, in this instance, instead of bypassing that and ignoring it or brushing it under the carpet, as characters often do with various things in this show, he instead says, I'm going to bring this interview to termination. I'm going to stop it. And that's really good. And then we get this backtrack from Sam apologising, which I quite like.
I'm sorry for being rude, but I have to, see.
Yes, thank you very much.
Sorry for it, but...
For me, when I watch the episodes, he's actually the star of this team, because he actually says something, does something, makes the team do something, he gets on with it. And actually, without him there, it would have been much, much less interesting to watch, I would perhaps argue.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there, and I happen to know for a fact that Jake doesn't, unfortunately.
Well, that's absolutely fine. Everyone's entitled to their opinion.
It's well done, this bit, I think.
Yes.
It does kind of give you the impression, oh no, maybe he's blown it all now.
Well, that can't possibly be the case, can it? Otherwise, that's the end of the episode.
Well, of course.
But the fact that it is not simply brushed over or ignored is good, and that the character actually does something about it. I mean, I don't know whether the characters on this production had earpieces to a producer or not. I couldn't tell you. I have no idea. I would guess that they didn't, but I don't know. And the reason I would guess that is because it would add another level of technological complexity to everything that's going on. If they do have an earpiece, then it might well be that the producer has stated they must apologise for this before we move on. If not, then it would simply be the character or the performer playing Perry deciding that that's the case. And either way is fine.
I think Sam almost puts his foot in it again here when he says, "I'm sorry for being rude, but I had to, you see."
Well, that's the words of a 10-ish-year-old in the early 1990s.
I bet the guy's thinking, "No, you didn't, you little shit."
You're just saying what's required in order to move on, which is what you should do in a game.
Perry graciously accepts the apology and resumes what he was trying to say before. He proposes that the Yellows share the information with him, then he'll tell them what he's discovered during his own investigations around the house and grounds. The Yellows tell him the scant facts that they have discovered, then they flatter Perry a little by telling him that they believe him to be more trustworthy than the other people they've talked to.
And they're just trying to butter him up now, aren't they? After knowing that they've already offended him, so they're on cracked glass, if you like. They're now saying something in order to make him be their friend, and it's a sensible thing to do.
Yeah, there's also the fact that they realise that they have given him nothing.
Yes, absolutely. That doesn't seem to matter in TimeBusters. It often doesn't matter in Nightmare.
That's true.
I'm very glad to have your trust. Now, the information I have to impart to you is that at night, I have been awoken by strange noises and luminescences emanating from the stable block.
Stables, yeah.
Now, I've tried to investigate these.
Yeah.
And whenever I try to get near, there's always been that manservant Jennings nearby.
Who's Jennings?
Manservant Jennings, who's he?
Jennings, the manservant.
He's the butler.
He looks after Uncle Rodney.
Jennings is the
He looks
butler.
like a butler.
Yeah, Jennings is the butler.
Exactly
I know,
that.
yeah.
He's the butler, yeah.
Have you searched the stable block?
No.
We went in there to talk to Patrick.
But have you searched it thoroughly?
No.
In which case, I suggest that you do that as soon as possible.
And there it is. That's the one piece of useful information that the Yellows need to know. So Rodney has hidden his time machine in one of the stables, and Jennings the butler, who must also be a time vandal, is there standing guard over it. But instead of going straight to the stable block, the Yellows wait around in the maze while the Reds come to talk to Perry. After a similar exchange of information to the one he's just had with the Yellows, Perry tells the Reds something that should help to discover the identity of the time vandal, which was actually supposed to be part of the Yellows task, but never mind. As we've mentioned already, they are working collectively. So yes, they linger around waiting to catch up with the other team because that's what they've been told to do, clearly, by a production person.
And aside from the little bit extra, they basically get the same information, but that's also good because it means that Perry is on the level.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I rewatched these two episodes in prep for this podcast that we're doing, I didn't remember, because it's been years since I'd watched it, who the actual time vandal was. And I thought, oh, it's Perry. And so, if it's able to manage to get me off track as an adult, perhaps not of major intelligence, but some, I thought it was Perry, and I was wrong. So this is the point where we learn that the time vandal is in fact not Perry and is in fact this other character.
I found that every area was open to me, apart from the garden shed. The shed at the end of the garden tunnel, which for some unknown reason seems to be always locked. Now, the other reason for me coming to the maze was that in the middle of the maze, they keep the spare keys to the garden shed. Now, I think that's well worth investigating, don't you?
Yeah.
And you chaps seem better built for speed than me, so I suggest you go and search the shed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Off you go. Good luck.
Perry entrusts the shed key to the Reds, who then meet with the Yellows in one of the maze passages so the team can exchange information. Unfortunately, it seems that neither team has quite grasped the information that they've been given.
No, they haven't, or it appears the way it's edited that they haven't. It doesn't seem to matter though, does it really?
No.
There's plenty of things that are going to remind them.
Yeah, one of which being TJ here.
Yes.
Trying really hard to help them out.
Well, TJ and Professor McNulty, they're reminding them of everything. So, actually you could argue that the TimeBusters are irrelevant and not needed when actually TJ and Professor McNulty could just do this quest themselves, find the time capsule and be off.
Yeah, just being lazy.
Just take out the question mark equation of the TimeBusters, which we don't need. Do it yourself.
Phoebe said that she didn't like Peregrine or Daphne or Patrick.
Oh, that's
and
great.
She didn't like no one.
She saw Rodney playing with dolls in Doll's House.
What does that mean? What does that mean? What do they mean about dolls?
What do they mean about
What do you mean by that? Sitting there playing with dolls in a doll's house.
She reckons he's gone senile.
She reckons he's gone senile.
So they haven't quite worked out yet that the time capsule is hidden in the doll's house.
No, but they're suddenly going to remember about the doll house, aren't they?
Yes.
Because somebody has prompted them such. The yellows head back to the stables where they find the time machine hidden under a tarpaulin. Rather than a DeLorean, it's an off-road Jeep-looking vehicle that doesn't belong clearly in 1925.
We found a time machine, Prof.
Well, get the paradox gun and blast it, TJ.
It's an interesting car, isn't it?
Yeah, it's totally out of place for 1925. I'd argue, too, it's probably out of place for 1990, Somerleyton Hall. It's a time machine, we're told, rather than a car. And, it belongs in a sci-fi photo shoot or theatre show. I wonder whether it was a prop that was hired from some prop house for the purpose of this shot, for this show, or I wonder whether it belonged to one of the production team and thus was just used because it looked good. Or I wonder whether, in fact, it was something that belonged to somebody at Somerleyton Hall and was there anyway and merely utilised by the production team for this purpose. I have no way of knowing. But yeah, we have a second time machine. We have a bus and now we have this off-road Jeep.
It does feasibly look like the kind of thing that might be used to pull like a couple of trailers that people were sitting on for a tour or something.
Well, could be. Yes, absolutely.
The Reds go to the garden shed and find the real Sir Rodney tied to a chair inside.
Yes, and this is an odd shot, isn't it? And firstly, it isn't a garden shed at all. It says bygones across the top of the door, so I think this is probably an area used for displaying old garden equipment or something like that. But instead of being presented with the museum, the children are presented with a man in long johns on a chair, which is not what you expect, perhaps.
It's a bit out of the blue, isn't it?
It certainly is. And why was he half undressed? That's my question.
I'm assuming because the time vandals needed his clothes.
Yeah, it makes sense, I suppose. Within his strange universe, it makes sense. Still an odd thing for these children to open a door and see, though, is this man in his long johns and vest.
So the Sir Rodney we know must be an imposter. Now, we need to be very careful. If that's the real Sir Rodney in there, we need to be very careful.
Because the other one's probably the time vandal.
The other one's the time vandal.
You would think they would take some time to rescue him, though, wouldn't you? At least untie him.
I'm not really bothered about him. No, they couldn't care less. They're off.
Just some bloke in his long johns.
That's not part of their mission, is it?
No. Professor McNulty hopes that the Red Controller, Emily, might come up with the idea to go back to the hall and check the doll's house, but she doesn't, so just tells him to go there himself. Meanwhile, TJ supervises the Yellows as they wheel the cumbersome paradox gun to the stables and use it to destroy the time machine.
Yes, and this paradox gun, which I haven't seen in TimeBusters' earlier episodes in this series 1, is this large, quite crude-looking sci-fi gun that wouldn't be out of place in 1960s Doctor Who, which allegedly can shoot and destroy this Jeep that is a time vehicle. And they managed to acquire, somehow that is not shown on camera, a sort of trolley with wheels with which to pull it from Buster to the stables.
Is it a gun that creates a paradox, or is it a gun that is a paradox?
It's a gun that needed an interesting name, and the name decided was Paradox Gun.
Right, okay, brilliant. Paradox gun on.
The Reds finally make it to the doll's house and retrieve the time capsule.
They do. They missed the clue earlier. Well, they didn't miss it, but they didn't realise the importance of it. But as usual, one of the hosts will remind them, so that's fine. And these time vandals, when you watch all seasons of TimeBusters, they consistently hide, in inverted commas, these very dangerous and important time capsules in the most obvious places. And this is one example of that. We've seen on the video feed the time vandal putting it in the doll's house. And I asked myself, within the TimeBusters universe, what is the camera that is filming that? And we are given the impression various times that there are drone cameras that are moving around the site, which is how we get the video feeds on Buster's scanner. But if that's true, then there would have been a drone camera right next to the time vandal as he's putting it in the dollhouse. I think he would have noticed it and probably done something about it.
You'd think, wouldn't you?
Maybe there's a cloak over them and they're invisible. A paradox cloaking device. Yes, that must be what it is.
Here it is, I've got it.
Well done, right. Now you must get straight back to the bus.
Right, straight back to the bus in case you see that.
Well done.
So both teams run back to the bus to the accompaniment of tension music and the ticking sound effects that we all know and love. So Rodney opens the doll's house and finds the time capsule is gone, causing him to rage in anger and frustration. And we see him bash his fist into his palm as a strong message that he is upset about this.
Yes.
The time capsule has been found, despite him hiding it in a very, very clever place.
I feel like it needs some papers that he can throw or something.
Yes, absolutely. Why don't the time vandals just keep them on them? You know, if these time capsules are so important, why do they keep putting them in silly places? Why don't they just keep hold of them?
So over the years of doing this podcast, we've all developed our own little headcanons about different things to try and explain stuff. My idea is that they emit some kind of low-level radiation, which is fine if you're in the rough vicinity of them, but it's possibly dangerous if you've literally got them on you at all times.
I accept that canon. That explains it away to me. However, if I was a time vandal and I knew about TimeBusters, which the time vandals do within their own universe, I would do something such as find a sewer, open it up and drop it in there so it can never be retrieved, rather than pop it in a dollhouse while a camera is watching me. Even if it's a cloaked camera.
The main reason is because the plot demands it.
So that's the only reason.
Quickly, come along, come along, come along. Quickly. Now stay there.
The Vandal's time machine's been blown away, Prof. He won't be going anywhere in that.
Excellent.
Oh, great, the time capsule.
Pretty soon he won't be going anywhere in anything. Quickly, on you get, you lot. There might be an irate time vandal on your tails. How are we doing, TJ?
Vortex closing, Prof.
So, let's get back to the present.
We see the Time Vandal start to pursue the Time Busters with a shotgun, which is something you would not get away with nowadays.
You wouldn't see it now in a kids' TV show unless there was a strong justification for it in the story. It sort of is a bit of a threat, isn't it? We know this person is evil, a Time Vandal, and now we see him with a gun. Oh dear, that infers he's going to shoot people, but then the time rift closes and he disappears back to his own time.
As the bus starts to dematerialise, Professor McNulty realises they've left the paradox gun behind. Maybe that's why it's called a paradox gun. Maybe leaving it behind has created a paradox.
So that suggests they intentionally left it behind.
That's the paradox. Maybe they didn't intentionally leave it behind, and perhaps that's how the paradox gun was created in the first place, in that it wasn't actually created. It was just found.
It's all a paradox, really, isn't it?
TJ tells them they'll get him a new one, although it doesn't address the potential problems that could arise when people from 1925 discovered a futuristic tech in their stable yard.
Yeah, unless the gun dematerializes itself and no longer is in 1925 and instead is in the same position at Somerleyton Hall in 1990, whatever year it was that this was supposed to be. Who knows? Or alternatively, maybe they just didn't get the shot of them retrieving the gun, and they should have done, and so they wrote a piece of script to explain that, which perhaps is why it's done as a voiceover and not an in-vision shot.
Perhaps.
Obviously, we're sort of having a bit of a laugh here where we're trying to apply canon or be subjective about how this could be real. The reality is it's a kids' TV show, it doesn't matter, and there was no intention to make it real. But it is interesting in terms of the supposed universe of TimeBusters and then how we have various things that clearly don't fit within that created universe. But the same thing applies to other shows of every type, including shows by Broadsword, but including shows of different types where they retrospectively change canon in order to explain something they want to do. It's fine. It's all fantasy. It's all a story, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not real.
And we've reached the end of the second episode. I think it's interesting seeing how TimeBusters started out. I personally prefer the faster pace of the single team episodes.
I think there's a lot more going on, or there appears to be a lot more going on in the episodes where you get a single team, where in the first season you've got the same length of episode, same length of television show, but you've got these two different trails who are essentially trying to do the same thing, but not sharing the information until they meet up. And there's overcomplications which I think aren't necessary, but that's just my opinion. But like I said at the top of this podcast, I suspect the reason for having two teams was probably to differentiate it from Nightmare, which was still on television on the opposing channel at this time, because it is basically Nightmare. Other than that, it's a dramatized adventure where you have to do certain things in order to reach a goal. But that is a big differentiator, the fact that we have these two sets of teams. But that's got rid of, we could conjecture as to why, and one of the reasons I would think is A, it's not necessary, B, it probably overcomplicates production, and C, it doesn't add anything to the viewer's experience of watching it. If anything, it probably confuses it. So therefore, we go to the one team going forwards, which I think was a good idea.
Yeah, agreed.
I liked TimeBusters. I was a big fan of it. I liked the premise. I enjoyed seeing the same performers play different characters in different shows. The fact that all of the programs across all of the seasons were completely different storylines, playing with elements of real history sometimes purely choosing a period of history and then making a fantastical story up in that time period. But often real pieces of history were referenced or used, and I thought it was a really good show, which is why it lasts for 3 years. Unfortunately, it suffered from the fact that it was put on the schedule at unusual times and therefore perhaps didn't reach the viewers that it might have done if it had been on a Friday afternoon schedule as opposed to where it was put.
Yeah, I've enjoyed discovering it as an adult because I maybe caught a couple of glimpses. When I was a child, I was vaguely aware that it was made by the same people who made Nightmare, but it kind of represents an era of children's TV that just doesn't exist anymore. A style of children's TV that just doesn't exist anymore. Now every kid's game show is play a messy game, get gunged. And a lot of that does come from that period as well, but this was something a bit more cerebral.
I think a lot of television shows from this era, and I would include Nightmare and TimeBusters in this, didn't require you to be entertained instantly within a couple of seconds, which is what's required today. It's required of a television show to gain your interest and engagement within a few seconds in order that you don't flick onto the next channel or return to whatever else you might be doing. Whereas back then, this is before the internet, this is before we had thousands of channels competing for your viewing time, and therefore it wasn't necessarily the case that you had to get people engaged every few seconds, whereas nowadays you do have to do that in order to keep the viewer. And that's probably why we don't have these forms of television show, these adventure game TV shows, as much as we did. I mean, if you look at Crystal Maze as an example, that's been redone in recent years, but it was much, much pacier than it was when it was originally broadcast in the 1990s. Hugely successful show, and I think it did relatively well now in the reboot, but it isn't on anymore, so it didn't last for very long. And I would argue that perhaps that's because the viewing style of the person watching it is very different, whether or not you're a child or an adult. You do have to keep grabbing attention, which is why now in TV shows, half of the television show is about what's coming up in this television show that you're about to watch. And then into the break, we see what you're going to see after the break. And then at the end, we see what you're going to see in the next episode. That's all because it requires to keep you there.
Yeah.
You never got that before. We didn't get 5 minutes at the end of Nightmare showing us what was going to happen in the next episode. But that is a staple of television production nowadays. Even in dramas, at the end of an episode of a drama, you're going to see 4 or 5 minutes of what you're going to see in the next episode, which makes you want to watch the next episode. It's not enough of whatever the cliffhanger is in this episode. That's not enough. We've got to deliver what you're going to get now. And it's just a reflection of how TV is nowadays.
I think you summed it up perfectly.
I think it's a shame, but I'm glad that I didn't grow up in the world like that. My attention was perfectly well kept by TimeBusters at the time.
If you've been enjoying the podcast, please leave us a rating and review on your platform of choice. It really helps us grow and reach more people who might enjoy what we're doing.
We're Nightmare Pod on Threads and Twitter, and you can find us on Instagram at Temporal Discussion.
You can also follow us on Blue Sky at nightmarepod.bsky.social and on Mastodon at topspicy.social/@nightmarepod. I will say our Mastodon is pretty dead. You're probably best off with Blue Sky.
Can I just say I've never even heard of it? I have no idea what it is. It sounds like a dinosaur.
It's a dinosaur.
We hate it when ads interrupt your podcast, so we're keeping this one ad-free with the help of our supporters on Patreon, which I do know about. You can join them by supporting us at Nightmare Pod. Speaking of which, here's a shout-out to Keepers of the Book of Quests, David N. Rabbit, Paul McIntosh, Peter Paulsford, and Scott Evans.
Advisors Benjamin Bloom, David Thompson, Kim Harder, Kim Stewart Crossley, Lord Entropy where the O is a 0, Paul Craddy, Peter Sidon, and Pig Venice.
Hello, Piggy, Piggy, Piggy.
And of course our Dungeoneers, Peter Courage, Dan Heath, Adam Battersby, and Adam D.
If you'd like to hear your name mentioned on the podcast, support us at Dungeoneer level or above on Patreon.
Patreon supporters also get access to exclusive episodes, merchandise, and if you pledge as a keeper of the Book of Quests, you'll even get the chance to join us as a guest on the show, if you so wish. Paid-up members also get access to each episode an entire week before everybody else.
Our website is nightmarepod.co.uk, and you can find Temporal Discussion merchandise, including t-shirts, stickers, and more at nightmarepod.redbubble.com.
You can also drop us what I personally use, which is an old-fashioned email at podcast@nightmarepod.co.uk.
And remember, if you find yourself pining for more TimeBusters in the future, you can easily take your mind off it.
Just run around a bit.
Jake's going on about with the night bingo thing. He's harking back to the he's going back to the Pride of Bilbao thing, isn't he?
Yes. He's definitely cleverer than myself and possibly you too.